There was very little, oh no, you know what, probably that, somebody was there, so yeah.
I signed up twice to take students in college.
City council,
Both times changed my life.
because of that, there was just a lot of.
I love playing music, but I
Dangerous
didn't want to
places.
for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Good luck. Where are you actually this year?
So it was, I mean, it was second semester. So they had a lot of.
You're ready to be busy for finals or things here about
Very appreciative.
it's already midterm.
Once they established, I don't want to think about that. So I don't. Other teachers.
I graduated May, but I
Good morning.
never got back.
Good morning. Wow. There's a lot of people here want to know what's going to happen when we die. Oh my gosh. Well, I gave a little bit of the answer, with our associate member, whatever you want to call her, Marlene, from California, because, she told me, if I don't come out of this, I know where I'm going, and she's at peace with that and so on and so forth. So, so there you go. Do we need to say anything more? I think, I'm pretty sure this is a fact because I say it a lot and I heard it from somewhere, and I've mentioned it, probably even mentioned it last week. Who are the people that fear death the most, do you think? Yeah, so we have talked about that. Christians, because of what Christians, the church has done, ever since Cain and Abel, to say you're not good enough. You got to do this, that, or the other, which is basically, you got to do what I tell you, or you're going to burn forever, and, you don't get a pass, go, and collect $200 and just jump on in. You are sent straight to, hell. So, but that's what the church did, for so many, and I'm not saying, and I'm talking the church, I'm talking the church. I mean, Catholic Church, Christian Church, everybody who believes in Jesus, because, I just think they use religion to hurt people and to scare people, so, if you dig deep, I mean, and the Catholic Church was really bad about that, back at the time of Luther. We can do an extra baptism, rebaptism. We can do a Holy Communion service for you, a Mass for you, but as Richard Rohr would say, at least we tried. We got purgatory and things like that. But, the Catholics have a problem, Protestants have a problem, and we need to correct the problem. Because we don't need to live in fear. I mean, if we believe what we believe, I should share like Richard Rohr stuff like with everybody, but that's not for today. That's a different topic. Do you know how many deaths we experience? How many deaths do we experience?
What do you mean by experience?
Yeah.
I asked you the question. Don't ask me a question.
Well, I think we experience a lot of deaths when there's a change. Like if I certainly experienced a death to myself when my parents died, because
Sure.
now there's a hole, or in my life there was, until I was healed. So I feel that we can use the word transformation.
Okay,
So,
yeah. Change
I
one.
feel like my life, as it was with my parents, was gone.
Right.
I mean, and then I was, now I can take that love with me and go on, but the grieving, so
Sure.
I felt like something died inside of me as well,
Yeah.
or any loved
Okay.
one.
Okay. What other deaths do we experience?
Those of us who've been to war.
Those of you who have been to war and you've seen, yeah, I just remember when Patton came out, that movie, you know, he's doing this big speech at the beginning, you know, with the big old flag behind him and, you know, trying to rally the troops to, you know, what are you gonna do? Well, when you put your hand in the guy's, in this mush that used to be your best friend's face, you'll know what to do. You know, you experience that through other people, whether it's a family member or a fellow soldier or whatever. But what other deaths do we experience?
Well, I think they're lost relationships. Sometimes that.
Okay, a lost relationship is kind of like a death. It's a separate, because death is separation, right? Supposedly. Okay.
Baptism?
Yeah, I think that's probably where I was going to go with that to a degree.
So there's
Oh, first of all, Leslie, welcome. Leslie Perry is our Community of Chiefs person at McGavick Elementary School. She is going to help us in about 35 minutes as we start putting together those 150 food bags. So thank you for being here. So baptism. You know, one of the songs I remember from Jesus Christ Superstar is Jesus saying, "To conquer death, you only have to die." You know, and so what is and it's probably from Matthew, but what does that mean? To conquer death, you only have to die. What do you have to die to? Die to sin. I would say self, which is kind of the same thing, but I think self might be a little bit more personal, a little bit more powerful than just sin. You know, it's important to, you know, part of me wishes that confession was a sacrament, like the Catholics do. But I think confession is very, very important because you have to die to yourself, to your beliefs, whatever those beliefs are, you know, to move on to something new. You know, I'll tell you right now, 15, 20 years ago, I wasn't an all means all guy. I wasn't. You know, when all the inclusion stuff started, like with LGBTQ, they said, well, show me. You know, I wasn't there, you know. So I had to die to what I believed that I grew up knowing, you know, to move on to something new, something better. So die to what we hold to be truths for ourselves. And how hard is it when you come to a realization that you're wrong about something? How hard is it to admit, you know, you're wrong?
Depends on what you're wrong about.
Well, I hope it'd be about everything, but
But some things are a lot harder to let go, especially if you've been believing for a longer period of time.
Well, sure.
than other things.
yeah. You know, I remember an episode from Happy Days. Y'all know Fonzie. Yeah. You know, he got caught being wrong about, and I forget what it is. I could probably go look it up. You know, and the whole episode, it took him like forever, maybe the entire episode, to say that he was wrong, because everything you grow up believing from the time you're a kid at Sunday school, you know, until you get our age. And happy birthday coming up to you, Jim.
Yes.
It's going to be a young, 90 years old. That's, it's just, and I've told this to his face, so I'm going to say it out here and get in trouble again. I want to be like this man right here when I grow up. I want to be able to play golf like you. You know, when I get to be 90 years old, hopefully. But, so I just lost that whole train of thought. But everything that we grew up knowing, you know, to change, you know, it's a death. You have to put away what you used to know, you know, to move forward into something new. You know, in Revelation that we've been studying for the last month or two on Wednesday mornings, it talks about the first death, and the second death won't hurt you. You know, the first death being death to ourselves, death to our ways of life, death to our ways of religion, death, well, I don't think there's anything else besides that. We won't go to politics. That's part of life. You know, but to change those views is kind of like burying them, you know, and being resurrected, being transformed, transfigured, you know, to a new way of understanding, a new way of life. And as we understand what we believe as Christians, that Jesus lived, Jesus died, Jesus forgave me, forgave you, forgave the world from his cross, that as he promised the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. And the thief thing, that is so wrong translation. It's like a terrorist. You don't put someone on a cross for stealing chewing gum like I did as a kid. You know, you put them on a cross because they were insurrectionists, you know, trying to disrupt the Roman way of life and Roman rule. So, you know, and Jesus, when he grew up, and when he, don't say it. When he was a refugee and had to go to Egypt, and when he had to come back, you know, what he would see on the hillsides all around his life were people hanging on crosses. And if we believe what we believe, that Jesus knew that was going to happen to him, because 8 days earlier from today's gospel, he said that, you know, to still want to do that, to die, to take away the power sin and death has over the world, why would we fear death? The physical death. Because I truly believe, you know, just like Jesus told that guy on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. And that guy didn't deserve it. And guess what? You don't either. And it's, again, going back to Ephesians 2:8-9 from last week. You know, it's not about what we believe. It's what God believes, what God does to give us that gift of salvation that we should not fear. Like Marlene, you know, if she doesn't make it, and hopefully she will, you know, Katie's mom, you know, they're going to be healed. And we just talked about that briefly. I mean, it is a loss when a family member or someone like that close to us dies. It's not fun, you know, but, you know, and I've told this story many, many times, you know. I was kind of glad when my mom died, you know, because she was not going to get better. She was like this, and I kissed her on the forehead and said, tell Jesus I said hi. You know, she didn't want to live that way, and I didn't want her to live that way, you know, but wasn't going to usher it in, you know, but that's what we believe. You know, that's what, you know, and the main thing, so we die, we can die almost every day, and we, truth be told, we probably should, you know, die to our way of thinking, you know, to God's way of thinking of just bringing love and care to all people. And as we do that and we believe what we believe, the second death that Revelation talks about, as the Spirit says to John in that book, you don't have to worry about it. You know, for those that haven't studied Revelation, it's one of the greatest books in the Bible about grace and hope. I'll probably use a little bit of it Thursday night, because that book is all about giving people hope, living in a very hopeless time. And I don't want to bring this up, but I can't not. I'm so, and I should have put it in the prayers. We are praying for Ukraine. You know, it's just unbelievable, you know, what is going on. Is it right? Are we all wrong? Is he wrong? Who knows? You know, but we're not coming together to come to a solution to give people life. We're keeping people feel and living in death. You know, and that's what the Christ came to help us to not do, is to help us give life and love. And we have to die to ourselves before we can make a change to feed 150 families, you know, a little bit later today. So what thoughts or questions do y'all have?
Pastor, I'm
Okay, well, how do we die in baptism? What is the purpose? What is the purpose of walking to this font, dipping your finger, and going like this, or whatever? What's the purpose of that? And what do we remember in our baptism? What have I taught the kids recently to say when they do this? Jesus loves me. You know, and to know, and then I would add to that, maybe not with them, in spite of, Jesus loves me in spite of me. You know, so we need to do our best as Jesus calls us to be perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect. You know, to die to ourselves, to our ways. You know, I think that's what, you know, we have to die to ourselves, and that's what baptism is. And that's, you know, Jesus' baptism isn't about getting dunked in the river by his cousin. It's important, you know, but Jesus' baptism, do you know what Jesus' baptism was? What was his baptism? You heard it, you know, in today's reading. Well, no, it's, you know, Elijah, Moses and Elijah, what were they doing with Jesus? Talking about, the text said departure. You know, it's really probably better translated his exodus. You know, Jesus' baptism was living the life God called him to live. That's why he could, you know, tell Satan to go take a hike, you know, in those 3 temptations. Or he was telling himself, his selfish will, maybe, I mean, there's a couple ways you can look at that. Because you know, Laura Conway said, tell you what, say what you believe. You know, I don't believe in Satan. I don't believe in a physical devil. I don't want to believe that a loving, caring, compassionate God would create pure evil. I just cannot believe that. You know, what I do believe, and I don't believe because I don't believe in, you know, Satan and devil and all that, I don't believe in a physical after-death hell. And many of y'all heard that. If you know, we can have discussions on that for those who haven't heard it. But I do believe in hell, because when we don't live Jesus' baptism, we don't live our baptism. When life is all about me, you know, what does that generally do for our ways of life?
Put your life in a hell.
Do what?
Put your life in a hell.
Well, it
Yeah.
puts others in hell, and whether we know it or not, because we think we're doing so great, we're maybe always looking over our shoulder or whatever. Our sinful self that, you know, gosh, there's so much. Going back to God I don't believe there's a Satan. You know, what does the word Satan mean? Do you know? Satan. Accuser. Who accuses us the most? We do it ourselves. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that accuse us of many things, and how does that make us feel? Yeah, not good, right? It's like you're living in hell. And if you're accusing other people, you know, they're living in hell because they're not living in love. You know, they're not doing what God calls us to do, to care and love, you know, and care for each other. You know, and you know, so I don't believe there is hell and Satan and all that. And God doesn't cause bad things to happen directly, but I think God does indirectly. Genesis 2:17. You know, talking about the forbidden fruit. He doesn't say if you eat of it. When you eat of it, you will become like God, right? No good and evil. You know, God knew God was giving us free will to make our choices. So the hells that we cause, indirectly, I guess, God is a part of that. Because he gives us a free will to love or to hate. Bottom line. I don't think there's any in between. You're either good or bad. Is there a medium place? Yeah, I don't know.
Being indifferent entirely, I guess.
Well, being indifferent in, the Church of Laodicea, I think it is in the Revelation text, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth because you are indifferent. I wish you were hot. I wish you were cold, but you're just right here doing nothing. And God wants us to do something, to not be indifferent, and as I think I heard Richard Rohr say, maybe one of those ones I sent, when you don't get involved, you're condoning what's going on. Exactly. If you don't get involved, you're okay with whatever is going on, whatever it is, whether it's religion or politics or life or whatever, Yes.
So when you die,
Yes.
do you go straight to heaven?
Okay, so okay, absolutely.
You don't go some purgatory or something and stay?
That's a Catholic
like
thing.
It's a man-made
End of life?
thing.
Huh?
You don't go somewhere and stay until and Jesus come back?
Oh, you want the answer to that?
Yes.
I think Becky does too.
No, yeah, well, there is a verse in the Bible where Jesus says something like the dead are only sleeping.
Okay.
But then he turned to the thief on the cross and said, today you'll be with me, so it's like there's a contradiction.
Yeah, I mean, you can get the Bible to say whatever you want. I mean, we can do all means all day long, and people can use those same verses, a lot of the same verses, and say, no, it's not. Here's my understanding. Here's my understanding, because there is contradictions, it seems to be. We didn't go to bed last night till 1 o'clock. And, so when you go to bed, and if you're of an age, don't you have to usually get up in the middle of the night? Yeah. And, so maybe one of the first things I do is, oh man, I've only been asleep 2 hours. I gotta go back to sleep. Okay. So, when you die, and today I'll be with you in paradise, it's where you put the comma. Truly I tell you, comma, today you'll be with me in paradise. Truly I tell you today, comma, you will be with me in paradise. So, you can even, so, when I go to sleep at night, and if I wake up in the morning, or wake up in the middle of the night and have to go to the restroom, I don't know how long I've slept until I do this. I go, oh man. So picture this, when you die, and if it's going to be when the trumpet sounds and everybody rises up, you won't know how long you've been sleeping. It's like you went to sleep, like my dad. My dad, the coroner said, because he fell asleep on a Thursday, we think, and since I never could get a hold of him, it was a holiday weekend, I called Dawsonville Police and said, can you go check on my dad? And they found him. And it's like he just laid down to take a nap. Now he was cremated, had to be, because most of it had gone away. So, well, isn't that a cheery thought, isn't it? And that's a story for another time. So, if he died, my mom died, whoever, and if it's not till Jesus comes again, everybody's raised up, they won't know how long they've been dead. But the wonderful assurance of that is that God's with them during that time of sleep. So, and that's what I counsel with people about death and dying. That's what I tell them. We don't know, but God is with them, wherever they are. Or it could be, me personally, I'm going to wake up and say, thank you, Jesus. And, I might want to say, sorry, I didn't do a better job, but I probably won't have that guilt when I get there. Then I look forward to seeing my mom and dad and Ron and whoever else, whatever. So, no one has the answer. No one has the answer. but the church will say, give me $50 and we'll get your, every time the coffer rings, they're sold from Purgatory Springs, right? The Luther thing, with Tetzel and all that stuff. Trying to control people, to have power over them so we can build this beautiful temple to Peter, and, whatever. So.
Marilyn and I were driving up this morning, excuse me, we were listening to Richard Rohr. He had an audience and he was telling them about his new book, and somebody asked the question, what happens after I die?
Uh-oh.
So we kind of knew this was coming this morning, and we were waiting, So his answer was, God loves me now while I'm living, and I see no reason why he won't love me after I die. And that was his answer,
That's good.
And
It's-
I felt like that was an artful dodge.
Well,
But Jim took it very differently.
sure.
Yeah, I thought that was a good answer.
Well, and why does God, why does God love you? You.
It's his nature.
He created us, and once we always want to go to the cross because Jesus died, which is really important. But if you focus your life of faith on Genesis 3, that's where you'll go. That I'm not good enough, and I had to have Jesus come to save me. And that's really not a good theology. We need that. Go to Genesis 1. Genesis 1, and how was the world created? What was the world created in? It's created, well, yeah, good, very good. And so if everything is good and it's not just we are very good, all of creation was very good. And how were you created? In God's image. He made the dust that you were formed of. And then what did God do? The breath of God breathed life into Adam and Eve. Together, not separate, not subservient one to the other, equals, so God created everything, even the dust that created these chairs and us. How can he not love us? That's a wonderful thing, that God just, I don't think it's in his DNA to not love us. I think it's Richard Rohr, when we were talking about, does God get disappointed? And I don't think he does, because God can't get disappointed in seeing us as the perfect, beloved child of God he created us to be. That's a human thing. That's a very human thing. That guilt and disappointment and stuff, for sure. And I hope, what I'm saying and what I've learned and, and experienced and teach and preach is somewhere even near close. But the point is, it doesn't matter how we die. Well, how we die is probably the things that most people fear, right? Yeah, and we really shouldn't fear, that we're going to die, because we're going to. I'm 70 years old. I know I'm not going to be here for another, well, hopefully 20 more years. And will you do my funeral at that time? Oh my gosh. The point is, what are we doing right now? If, as Richard Rohr, this one that I sent you this week, if we truly believe what we believe about Jesus, about God, what are we doing about it? That goes back to last week, Ephesians 2:10. Once we understand that grace, what are we doing about it? How are we going to help, Katie Lubeck? Her mom's probably going to die today. Everyone, please send her a card before you get a note from Natalie or someone to do it. I'd love for them to get back in the house. Well, you you probably gotta wait to see what happens. You don't wanna say, sorry for your loss. Then she has a miraculous recovery, you know, or vice versa. But, you know, when we get, I mean, you could send a card that we're praying, you know, and then when we get the news and send it out, take 5 minutes and write another card, you know. Because that's what we do, you know, as followers of a guy named Jesus of Nazareth, you know. And remember, Christ is not his last name. You know, Jesus, you know, and as Richard Rohr says, you know, instead of the Son of Man, which we read in scriptures, you know, he translates the Greek and the human one. And we have to remember how human Jesus was. I know the divinity thing, you know, both, 100% both, you know, but Jesus was very human, and he did what he did, you know, even starting with the temptations in Luke's gospel, you know, he did what he did following God's will for his life, you know. And so what, you know, if we believe, you know, what we believe, you know, about life and about death, the point is, what are we doing right here, right now, you know, to change us, to change anybody who walks in these doors, to change the 150 families that these, you know, food bags, you know, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. You know, it's as easy, and I hope it's not something I say all the time, but it's really important. When you go to lunch today, thank your waitress, or your wait person, or the person that greets you, or whatever, or go to Walmart, you know, and just let people know, because there's a lot of people hurting. And I really think, you know, not to get political, because this has been going on for years, not just in the last month. You know, our political problems, our religious problems have been going on for forever. You know, but we're called to make a difference. You know, to change people's lives, to help them die to their beliefs, you know, and be reborn, you know, to a new belief. You know, whatever that is. But, you know, it still happens to us, too. I mean, I don't have all the answers. Y'all know that. And, you know, but, you know, so there's something we can always learn, something new every day, you know, and then how to incorporate what we learn every day into an everyday type of life. Maybe you'll get 1,000 birthday cards. Yes.
You know, I wanna, you know, I
Really?
just
Can you
hear
speak up?
Oh, really? I'm so loud, I thought. When my dad was dying, he kept seeing people who had died.
Yeah.
I
And,
was just gonna point that out.
and,
There was this song called The Other Side by Lauren Elena, and she talks about her stepfather dying.
Yeah.
And he was telling her not to worry. He's like, I see my mom, she's about 23, climbing with the angels.
I've heard many, many stories like that.
and my mother-in-law too, you know, and, when I was adopting her and her brother in Ukraine, a good friend of mine who died when he was 25 was so vividly in my dream, and he was on a line with my mom, like registering him, this was the dream, and we got a call that my mom was dying, no, it wasn't you, it was Oksana, that my mom was dying and I had to leave the country.
Yeah.
And I afterwards, I get the chills, and I'm like, I know Joe was telling me my mom was gonna be with him. And, you know, and my friend also, they're seeing their loved ones, which is
Yeah.
very, very comforting to me. And when the Winthrops asked if I knew, could I do a reading for my mother-in-law, I chose Revelation.
Okay.
You know, because that is such hope, and, I think that's a great, you know, book to pick from for a funeral like that. And I think Jesus shows us with Lazarus, with the, this is what's gonna happen to you. We have to believe that, you know?
Yes, and you know, in the Lazarus stories, everybody thinks that Jesus is crying because his friend died. That is so wrong. It could be part of it, but if I was gonna say, if you know the Greek, like I know the Greek, but I know some of it, and through my studies, you know, that deep, intense, gut-wrenching, you know, if you would only believe, you know, in that story, Jesus is crying, I believe, and many others believe it's more so because people, maybe like you all, that aren't getting it. You know, that death is the end, you know, and it's not. And it's not. There is life after death. You know, and he was so agitated in his spirit and began to weep because people just did not understand it. And guess what? In another week, I'm going to die. You know, to make sure, to help them understand the fullness of what my baptism was all about. And then they still didn't get it.
How could they?
Because, and how could they? And, you know, people would say, I've had many conversations, well, if we'd have been there, yeah, you'd have run away like the rest of them. You know, and I would have too. Because they didn't have a clue. And if there's ever going to be guilt, you know, from a Christian standpoint, I think Easter evening would have been a really good time for that. When Jesus popped up, you know, on that road to Emmaus, what did he do? He kept teaching Bible studies about what had to happen. When he appeared at the disciples' room, you know, later on that night, I told you, why didn't you believe? Peace be with you. He brought peace. He brought forgiveness. He brought hope, and they still didn't get it. You know, so he came back another time and did the same thing. And then he cooked fish on the, you know, I talked about that a couple weeks ago, I think. You know, he continued to feed them, continued to teach them, you know, that there's life after death. And I think your question from last week, did Moses ever get into the promised land? He did. You know, it's in today's gospel. Whether he died and was resurrected or get new life, or some belief, since they don't know where his bones are, that he never died like Ezekiel, you know, he got into the promised land because he is on the Mount of Transfiguration with Jesus. You know, but, you know, if you read Matthew's gospel, and I didn't catch this till like 5 or 10 years ago, on the resurrection, on Jesus' death, as soon as he died, it says the people and the dead started being raised. And people saw him in the streets. I mean, it's in the gospel, it's Matthew. You know, there's life. You know, the whole thing about our belief system is life and love. It's not judgmental guilt, you know, gonna get you. You know, it's just not. And again, that's our understanding. And I think trying to feed people, you know, with food, with hope, with forgiveness, with love is a little bit better, a whole lot better than you better do this or you're going to go to hell. God's going to get you. You're going to burn forever. You know, most of our images of hell come from Dante's Inferno. For the most, yeah. You know, yeah. A lot of the words, are like mythology words. Deus for God, Zeus for, you know, God, yeah. So, anyway, so maybe people should fear how they're going to die, you know, but we shouldn't fear dying. You know, but maybe the worst death is dying to ourselves, to change ourselves, to be more loving and caring and understanding. I've got some really good stories I could tell about that right now, but I can't yet. I did have a conversation with my dad. I don't forget when. We were visiting him one time before he died. You know, being a pastor, you know, what are you going to do when you die? You know, and well, I don't know if he brought it up. You know, I'm not going to live forever. Oh, well, okay, let's talk about what you want. You know, for service or whatever. What a wonderful. And we got to do that here. We haven't done it since before the pandemic and before the tornado and all that stuff. You know, how to prepare for a funeral, how to prepare for your funeral, you know, to help our loved ones go on. So we'll need to do that. Maybe that'd be a good follow-up sometime really soon, because it's really important. Because there is so much that you just don't know. Or you might not know, you know. Not that I have all the answers, but there's just things you need to know, you know. Do you know all his passwords? She doesn't know mine.
We've created,
Yeah.
I haven't gone through that process as meticulously as Jim has. He has a file folder for me, and I have some of that already prepared.
Yeah.
In fact, I bought a book called, I forget what it's called, but anyway, it's to put all your stuff in for when you die.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much that you just don't think about, and there's a lot of things that have changed.
Especially today with technology and all those passwords, all those accounts that have to be canceled.
You know, she wouldn't have a clue to where to find my stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that terrible? And I know this. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking on my way in this morning, my kids, if I died today, my kids couldn't get into my phone
Yeah.
because I forgot to write down the passcode.
You know what
to my
they can do?
phone, and it's, of course, my thumbprint.
They'll
and
take-
a-
They'll take your phone out of your
Yeah.
dead hands and stick it to your face and put your thumb on it.
Yeah.
You see it on NCIS all the time. Isn't that-
But I have a very, very old phone. But
Yeah.
it still has the pin. You have to put in the pin or the thumbprint, so.
All right, so we're gonna do this, not for a couple of weeks, because we got spring break coming up. So maybe, you know, either before or after Easter, we need to have that discussion, because we need to have that discussion. You know, we all need
It's
to
a
have it.
gift of love.
It is a gift of love. You know, I've had several funerals that I've officiated at where I just showed up. Because here's what we want.
It was all laid out.
It was all, you know, and Elsie Johnson had my homily pretty much all done.
Yeah.
You know, but not to make my life easier, is to make your life easier. That you don't have, oh, what did she want for a Bible verse? What were her favorite songs? So as difficult as it is to have those discussions, we gotta have those discussions, you know, because it helps everybody,
Right.
you know, to celebrate, you know, the life, you know, that God has blessed us with, you know, to help us. That's why we don't call them funerals anymore, you know, celebration of life. You know, because, you know, and I love funerals. Oh my God, I love funerals. Celebrations of life. You know, my pastors told me when I was going through the process, about to be ordained, you know, you're gonna appreciate or love funerals more than weddings, and they're true. Yeah, because, yeah, I could tell stories. Well, I like weddings too, but the people are more open. You know, weddings want this and want this. I had a mother of the bride come into the rehearsal. I didn't know she was a maid of honor, and she brought like 20 sheets of paper. This is what we're going to do. And I go, thank you very much. You stand here. And it went well. But I mean, it's very emotional. I mean, my daughter's getting married, and we want everything to be just right. And we're gonna do that for sure. You know, but funerals bring people together more,
Yes.
and telling the stories, you know, and continuing to build relationships, and that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. You know, to help us when we do die. We're gonna close it up, because we gotta go put the bags together, and we got places to go. But yeah, we need to continue to build loving relationships here to help us, you know, celebrate when those times come for all of us. But more so, it's what we do right here, what we do tomorrow, what we do the next day, and the next day to bring a little bit of hope into people's lives. Gotta die to yourself, and don't worry about the next one. Amen. It's 4 minutes late, so I'm gonna turn this off, and we're gonna go down there, we're gonna figure out how we're gonna do this. Oh, did you interrupt?